Hello, good evening. I used to have a little child I used to look after, and she couldn't say good evening, so she said good evening, good evening. I'm at home, and every time I say that word, I'm at home, or someone asks me, "Where's your husband?" and I say he's at home. We just, for the general part, assume home or take home to be where we lay our head to rest at the end of a busy day where we go out from to go struggle for the day. But most importantly, home for many of us is that safety place, that place of safety, that safe zone where you can be yourself, where you're vulnerable, where you are not judged, where you can be whoever you are. And I was watching a a clip on Instagram about Lupita Nyong'o when she was talking to Trevor Noah. I don't remember the program. Someone had just taken part of that clip to make the message she was trying to create a content with it. And Lupita said in that video that there was a time where her visa, she had a visa, I can't remember exactly what visa, but it was expiring and she was in between two options, either to go back home after its expiration or to accept a very poor role in a movie so that she could have the visa extended. She didn't like the role, but she was also thinking after everything her parent had put through, she go home. It felt like she was giving up, and she didn't want to. Fortunately, she could talk to her mom about it, and the mother said to her, "Look, you don't have to spend your life trying to please other people, whereas there is a home, there's a shelter, and there are people who love you back here in Kenya." you know and that was the message Eric was trying to take from that video, and that has stayed with me. I think it's about 2 or 3 weeks that he's made that clips on Instagram. I'm not in a position to replay it here, to make me really think, where exactly do we call home, especially as children? Are our homes safe spaces for our kids? I was talking to someone about that, and I said, I never knew I came from a humble background or from a poor home until I left the shores of Nigeria, until I went to live with a wealthy family when I went to Congo. My parents are from Congo, so my father wanted me to identify with my nationality, which was hope for him, even though he'd been in Nigeria for so many years, for decades. So, home is another place where we tend to say, this is our roots, this is where we belong, no matter where we roam. There is a saying that says, whether you go east or west, home is the best. So he wanted that for his kids, that we should have a Congolese, I should have a Congolese passport, even though I was born and bred in Nigeria. And it was when I lived with that family that I began to realize, oh, okay, my parents couldn't afford all this luxury for me and my siblings, but we didn't feel that lack for the singular reason that we felt safe in that house. It was a very small bungalow, 2 bedrooms. We're not a large family, but I remember we would always look forward to go home. Ask any child who studied in a boarding house. They always look for holidays, not because they are tired of school, but because they want to be with their parents. They want to be in that safety net. They want to be in that place where they feel safe. And that is what home is for children more than anything, for spouses. Unfortunately, I have also met a lot of friends as I grew up who had houses, who had parents, but they were never at home. And what it means is that they couldn't be themselves. They were always rebuked, they were always criticized or made fun of. For some reason, they just didn't feel safe, And that is most unfortunate, especially as a child, if where you were born into, the home you grew in, doesn't feel safe for you. That is the most unfortunate thing that can happen to anybody. I remember reading the comments after that video, and a lot of people were saying, oh, when their parents would send them to university, or when they would go on to pursue their careers, or especially when they were leaving for abroad, going to see greener pastures, their fathers or their mom will always tell them, remember, you have a home here. You can always come back home, because at the end of the day, that is your root, that is your starting point in this life. It is home. For some children, they've not had that, and to think that after not having a home, as a child, it's for many people, their friends' houses were their homes. I've read about that also. I've seen a lot of parents who said they came back from work, or they'll wake up in the middle of the night and their kids would the friends of their kids would crash in the sitting rooms all over the place, wherever they could lay their head after a party, not because their homes were far, but because they didn't feel safe to go back home after the party. And for me, I always tell my younger siblings, don't you ever take the option of home for the younger ones, Unfortunately, for such people, because they have not felt safe in their home, that is among their family members, there is that fear of rejection that most times we end up falling into different hands with our future spouses, because we are also trying to now build a home. So you see many people get married out of desperation. I know of a lot of step kids, or have kids, adopted children, or extended relatives that just want to get married because they want to go and find their own houses, they want to go and build their own homes, and they end up with the wrong spouse. For me, home as an adult is where, if you're single, you can go back and lay your head to rest in peace. If you spend a lot of time on social media, you will find out that there are a lot of people that, as soon as they get home, all the appearance of elegance vanish. There was one I saw like that. This lady had her wig on, her heels on. She was invited to dinner and she had all her table manners on display. But as soon as she got home, once she closed the door behind her, the shoes went off, the wig went off. She put in the food in the microwave and sat down and ate with her bare hands, because that was her house. That is home to her. Nobody's there to judge her, nobody's there to make fun of her, nobody's there to assess her whether she has table manners or not. She was home. And so she had the liberty to do whatever it is that she wanted to do. There is a tribe in Nigeria that we call the Igbos. When I watch a lot of Nigerian movies from the east of Nigeria, I love the expressions people say, especially young men or young women. They'll say, how dare you come to my father's house and talk to me in that manner? Or they'll tell their parents, this is my father's house, and if you don't like what I'm doing, go to your father's house. Because that is your safety space. That is your kingdom, so to say. That is your space. And in your space, you should be able to feel that way. Now, when you get married, for many homes, it is your job as a woman to make the house a home. How you behave yourself, the atmosphere, usually, excuse me, is determined by the mother of the house, so that when the mom is grumpy, the children are afraid, the husband is a bit worried. I remember there was a neighbor one time that came to my house because he just couldn't stand the tension in the house. The wife was in one of those moods, and he just came like, "Is your husband around?" I said, "Yes, I'm coming." And I said, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I can't deal with your friend. She's in one of her moods." And we underestimate the power that we as women have to make a house a home. There was a boy who told his friend, I want to go to Jojo's house. And the mother was like, why do you always want to go there? And he said to his mom, because Jojo's mom is always singing. And that is the atmosphere that she had set in our home. So it felt warm, it felt welcoming, and his mom wasn't doing that. And that lady had to go to the neighbor's house, to Jojo's mom, and say, why are you always singing? What do you do that makes my son want to come to your house and not stay with me in the house? I mean, not that the child doesn't love her, but he didn't feel at home, with the mom. And so many of us as women, God has given us that sacred responsibility of making a house a home, which unfortunately, due to the feminist movement, many of us have refused to assume that responsibility. And I'm not saying it's a sole responsibility. I'm saying that when we take on that responsibility, it is easier for our husbands to see what we're doing and step up. Or it is easier for the husband to continue what he's doing, as the head of the home. And a man can also set up the tone of his house. There are many friends. I remember when we were kids, we used to have neighbors where when they said, your father is coming, and the whole house just changes like a lion was coming out of the bush. Those men don't make a house a home. The way you treat your children, the way you relate with your kids. Fathers are known to be like very harsh, very strong, too strict, where the child cannot talk to them because they see how he talks to their mom, and they're thinking if she's an adult and dad can scold her, who am I as a child to make a mistake in the house? People have taken that issue, the statement or the scripture of sparing the rod and spoiling the child, to such an extreme that a child is even flogged out of making mistakes. What I'm trying to say is, the child is so afraid to even make a mistake because we have flogged their childhood out of them. We've made the house so uncomfortable, for those children. And what happens is that at the end of the day, these kids grow and they go find their own homes, they go create their own homes, create their own atmosphere, to the point where they don't look after you again, they don't want to be close around you begin to have strange relationships that are most times sustained because there are grandkids now, and the grandkids needs their parent. I've seen people say, now they are old, see the way they are treating their grandkids. It's quite different from what they were how they treated us when we were young you know and so I wanted to really ask yourself, if you're a parent, do you really, really make your house a home as a father? Are your kids happy when you're around? Are your kids glad to see you? Do they wait at the gate? Do they run out when they hear you honking the car, or when you knock at the gate if you're not mobile? As a mom, how do you comport yourself, in the house? Do your kids find you approachable? I once was in a women's conference, and this woman was saying, her maid told her, Mom, when you're upset, I'm so nervous, and that is when I have these accidents in the kitchen. She was breaking a plate, and she's like, why do you break? No, mommy, the thing is, when you are tensed, I'm afraid, and I get jittery, and that's when the plates or the cups fall out of my hand. And it clicked me to say, it's very, very underappreciated. We don't really, really realize how powerful our words, our comportment is in the house. If it can affect an adult, if it can affect your staff, your colleagues, there are friends who are home to us. There are friendships that we feel safe. That's what I'm trying to say. There's this friend that you can be with her or him, and you can cry, you can do anything, and they will still be there for you, tell you the truth to your face, and say, look, Dorcas, you messed up, but they will not leave you. That is home. So you can make a friendship a home, you can make a relationship a home. And I think it's how we deal with other people, it's the relationships we have that make our spaces homes. There are people that you have in your life, if you're blessed like I am, that how can I say, you just miss them, because when they are around you or when you're around them, whichever way, your heart is just at rest. Like the kids say, my heart loved you when it saw you. My heart just liked you, and my heart fell in love with you. And there are people like that, you form that connection. And I can go to this person's house, and you get there, and you know your way around the house. You can go in, change your clothes, wear one of her pajamas, go to the kitchen, make whatever you want to eat, because they said feel at home. And you do feel at home. That is what friendships are based on. That is what homes are based on. That is what relationships create. They foster home. The home is not necessarily the building, and that comes also to play, but depending on how the people who dwell in that house treat that house. A lot of times we buy a nice house, or we move into a bigger apartment, we move into a safer neighborhood, with a bigger house, but we don't treat our environment in a way that we come back to it, happy, that we yearn to go back to it. We wake up, we just leave the bed unmade, the kitchen undone, the dishes not washed, the sitting room, the cushion, everything is a mess, and people are thinking, I can't go to the house because I don't know how my wife left it, or I don't know how my husband left it. Sometimes it's the men, it's not even the women. Sometimes our kids are embarrassed to bring their children, their friends home, because we just, we just don't care. And if you're not at home with yourself, there is it reflects in your immediate environment. Imagine how you go to work tired. I mean, you go to work, gingered up, and you go, and then you come back, and then the bed is not made. Do you know how discouraging that is? To me, I find it very, very discouraging. You come back, the bed is not made, all the clothes that you were trying, while you were trying to get ready for the day, you left them, you didn't put them back, and you're like, you walk out, you go to the kid, you throw the bag on the bed, and then you go to the kitchen, you try to make food and everything, and then the dishes were there since morning. Okay, you can even understand that perhaps maybe one or two dishes were left undone, but your bedroom really tells you a lot about your state of mind. And building a home begins with yourself. It actually begins with yourself. It begins with your inner space. If you are not at home, at ease with your spirit, if you cannot be quiet and listen to yourself, think, listen to the voice of your head, listen to the still voice, or your voice in your head, that you have to play music so loud that you have to drink, or scroll mindlessly through the phone because you're afraid to sit down with your own thoughts. Gradually, those things, whatever it is that is eating you or disturbing you or that you're running away from, begins to manifest in your immediate environment. So making a home. Where is home? Home for me begins with myself. Home for me begins with my mind, begins with my heart. How comfortable am I in my thoughts? How peaceful am I in my heart? Then the next place is my room. I want to be, I want my room to always be a place I can easily walk in and throw myself on the bed. That is why I practice making my bed first thing in the morning, because I work from home. I love it when I can finish on the computer and come into the room and just lay down on a made bed. So it starts from there. And then you take it to the sitting room, where everywhere is clean. You are not embarrassed if someone should knock on the door and say, hey, I said I should pop in and say hi. Then home is, then from there, when you're at peace with yourself, it is the relationships that you build with other people. How do you communicate with your friends, with your family members, if you have children, if you are parents, with your kids, or with your spouse? Are they comfortable? Are they comfortable to be vulnerable with you, and they know that they will not be judged or taken advantage of? Those are the things you ask yourself. That is that is how you begin to create a home for you, for your spouse, for your children, for your community, for your family. Some of us, we've gone so far in life, maybe financially and materially, that people are even afraid to come and visit us, because we have made it, so to say, in quote, and we are afraid, people are afraid to come. So, "Ooh, if you go to her house, she's gonna, treat you like this." They're afraid to sit on your couch. They're afraid to put their legs on the carpet because, you're giving airs like you make yourself very inapproachable. Those kind of things, don't make a home, But you have to start from somewhere. If you didn't have a home, try to make a home for yourself, and then for your children if you intend to be parents, and for your friends most especially, because no man survives in isolation. If you're not comfortable with yourself, you cannot be comfortable with other people. Even at workspace, be that person that people can approach, not take advantage of, but people can approach. If you're a business person, if you're a teacher, be that homely comfort zone where your students can approach you, even though they know that you will, correct them if they go wrong or they go astray. you know so that is just um what I wanted to say. How to make your home, what you call home, let me know in the comment section. Other things that I did not mention, that makes your house a home, or your family a home. And I'll see you guys sooner than later. Thank you very much for being here. Bye bye.